All right, we can begin. Um, Welcome everyone to the finals briefing for CISS, or the Critical Infrastructure Security Showdown. This year's theme is the return to control. And in the first phase of the exercise, you guys emerged as the top 10 teams and worked on a variety of infrastructures which were virtualized. And this time around in the finals, you will be playing with physical, actual, real infrastructure. So the stakes are much higher in this finals exercise. So this session will go into a lot of detail. And before that, I just want to congratulate all the teams that made it to the finals. And this means that each one of you will be getting 3 hours during the familiarization session, which I'll talk about, and 4 hours during the final session to find all the possible weaknesses in these infrastructures and demonstrate them to us. The agenda for today's session is to go into all the different aspects of this exercise, starting with objectives, then the details, how you will connect to the network, like what are the different prizes available, the road to the finals, which means what the month ahead would look like for all of us. And finally, the most exciting part for our briefings, which has never been done before, but we are very excited this time. In order to help mentor you, we are joined by none other than Marina Krotofil. She will be presenting an OSINT briefing to help you with strategizing your red team activities during the exercise. So I will try to wrap up my session as soon as possible because she has a wealth of information to share afterwards. So if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the chat. I'll attend to them after the session, or my colleagues can help respond during the session in the chat itself. So I'll start with the objectives of CISS. I'll repeat them based on what I had done in the briefing last time. The objective is to understand all the possible TTPs for critical infrastructure and making sure we can red team effectively for these infrastructures so that they can be defended even more effectively when a real attack happens. So all of you are playing the role of an offensive security team who are pen testing the networks to the best of your ability. And you will be given access to 3 world-class testbeds in order to do this. For the broad details of the finals, these are the main dates that you should be aware of. We will be sharing these slides later, so don't panic if you miss out on any details. We'll also be sharing the recording with you later. The OSINT drop from our side will be on 3rd of September. I'll describe it in a bit. Then the virtual machine submission from all of you, in case you have a customized VM, will be by 8th of September. The network familiarization period itself will be from 16th to 24th September. And the finals itself will be in a 4-hour slot between 29th September to 3rd October. The results and the closing address will be on 7th of October. And we'll have top 3 prizes. And this is the broad overview of the exercise. For the first part of the exercise, which is the Intel drop, we have been informed that there's a large-scale attack going to happen in the world in which the exercise is set in, which is the Lord of the Rings universe. So the Mordor army will be conducting a big attack in the coming weeks. Before that, we need to prepare as collectively the green team from our side in Minas Tirith and the red guard, which is all of you, the red teamers, in order to secure the vulnerabilities as much as possible by exposing all possible weaknesses in the system. So by 3rd of September, we will be releasing packet captures as well as historian data sets for all the infrastructures available in this finals exercise. And you can do whatever you want with this information. Hopefully, it should help you understand the network even better, and also help you go through a time series data of different components of the plants, which will help you understand the OT behavior of the plants. And it may not be necessary that the network capture correlates with the historian dataset. It's very likely that it will be the case, but it's also possible that you might get two separate sources of data altogether. This link will be sent to all of you via email. And if you have noticed, we haven't been responding on Discord over the past couple of weeks. This is because email will be our primary source of communication going forward. Marina will be sharing more OSINT information after this briefing. Next, I come to the red team Kali machines, which we have prepared for you. So we have prepared 8 VMs based on the latest version of Kali for all of you. And I've shared the network details for them in this slide. We will also be sharing detailed connection information in a later email that you will expect before the familiarization period. So we will be giving you a VPN profile and credentials to connect to the network. You can either SSH or RDP to these Kali machines, and you will have internet access within the Kali machine in order to install any tools if you may want to do so. And finally, we will be freezing the state of these machines for you to use during the actual exercise itself. So that's the summary of the Kali VMs. They are pretty powerful machines with 8 cores and 16 GB RAM. And of course, you will have power user rights on these machines. If, however, you want to upload your own customized VM, then you'll have to inform us as soon as possible. The deadline for submitting your customized VM is 8th of September, like midnight Singapore time. For this, the instruction is that you have to email this particular email and also CC like us on the email that you have been receiving to upload your image either in the VMDK format or OVA format to your Google Drive. And please make sure that the OS language is English so that when we are configuring it on our side, it's very smooth for us to set it up. So you can provide us all the requirements necessary and ensure all the necessary tools are installed. And then we will be setting it up, and then you can potentially use it during your familiarization period itself. We will be allocating an IP address for this VM. But based on our past experience, most teams use the Kali VMs provided by us. They should be self-sufficient for the most part. The scenario for the network familiarization session is that all of you are supposed to enumerate the network as much as possible. So as the red guard, you have to access all the systems that you can see on the network as much as possible, but no attacks are involved. No attacks at all are allowed during this session. So we will be tracking and analyzing the network throughout this session. So please don't attack any of the components in the infrastructures during this session. The whole idea of this session is to take all the OSINT information and the network packets, as well as Marina's wisdom that you have learned, and adapt it to improve your mental model for these systems in those 3 hours so that your 4 hours of the finals exercise is most effective. So the details for this familiarization session is that it will be a 3-hour session between 16th to 24th of September. You are invited to book your session. We will be sharing the booking links very soon. You can check the VPN connection to Kali Linux, and then you can install all the necessary tools during the session or request support from us through the email that we have provided. The scenario for the finals execution is as follows. The scenario goes like there's an impending siege by the Mordor army very soon. So before the siege, we want to make sure that we know of all the weaknesses in our system. So as the Red Guard, you have to conduct crucial pen testing and expose and demonstrate all the vulnerabilities you find in the infrastructure before the enemy discovers them first. So this is the broad scenario. And the 3 platforms which are involved is the electrical power testbed, water treatment testbed, and the water distribution testbed. So the details for the final session corresponding to these testbeds is that it will be a 4-hour session per team between 29 September to 3rd of October. So there will be a morning session and an afternoon session. You will be invited to book your slots through the email that we send out after this briefing. And APAC teams, so teams located in this part of the world, are requested to take the morning slots in order to make it easier for the other teams to book their session in the afternoon slots. We invite you to complete as many objectives as possible, and we will be releasing all the attack objectives and detailed scoring criteria on 9th of September. So the broad strategy for this exercise is that the first hour of the exercise will be exclusively focused on the power testbed. So you won't be given access to the power testbed for the first hour, because we want to see your creativity exclusively on the power testbed first. This will be followed by opening up the access to the rest of the 2 testbeds after that 1 hour. So in the rest of the 3 hours, you can access all the 3 testbeds and conduct as many attacks as possible. So this brings us to the technical information for the exercise itself. So I've highlighted some IP addresses for each of these testbeds, but please make sure that we will be sharing detailed connection info. So you should cross-check all this information during that setup period itself. So you will be entering the form-up area or the FUA for the exercise via VPN. We will be providing the VPN credentials. So you will be connecting via the internet to our network, and then you will be given access to all the 3 testbeds. So that's the broad network architecture for this exercise. To briefly describe the setup for these testbeds, you already have received an email with all the OSINT for these testbeds, but broadly, the raw water treatment plant, after water treatment, provides water to the water distribution testbed, and after that, the clean water is supplied to different consumers. So you will have to see how these testbeds are interconnected and how these interconnections can be used to create very novel and innovative attacks. So I'll share the HMI screenshots for both the water testbeds. Water treatment testbed is in front of you. The water distribution testbed looks something like this. And now we come to the power physical testbed, which has 2 generators, G1 and G2 as its power sources, and electricity is supplied to 3 different sinks, which is the critical load, the non-critical load, and the water testbeds. So this is what the power grid looks like for that particular phase of the exercise. Now, quickly coming to the rules of engagement. 20 minutes before the session, we expect you to dial into the MS Teams, Microsoft Teams rooms. The link will be provided through an email. You have to connect to the form-up area using VPN credentials, like I said. The communication and coordination will be purely between the judge and the red teams via the red team lead. So we invite you to select one red team lead among you, and all the communication will be between the judges and this one red team lead. Then a very important thing is that all members should be sharing their screen during the session. And this recording will be done on our side for analysis purposes only, for the purposes of scoring, as well as understanding how you conducted your attacks. This will not be published or shared without your permission. The clock will start when the judges declare begin, and then the exercise will go on for a total of 4 hours continuously. There is no limit on the number of sessions you can create for enumeration. Permission from the judges is not required at this point. For launching attacks, however, you need to take the judges' permission first. So the way to do that is to declare the attack objective that you want to achieve and explain how the attack will be launched. After that, the attack is to be launched only after you receive a go-ahead signal from the judges. So there'll be a continuous audio link between the judges and the red team, and you are free to switch on your video as well if you want to. The verification of the attack objective will be independently carried out by you as a red team. So you have to demonstrate the attack and you have to show the proof of the attack being successful. We do not accept attacks where you will ask the judges whether the attack worked or not. We will only verify the attack once there is sufficient proof from your side, which can be done through a screen share of different systems that you have found, or through some network packet information, or through however you want to demonstrate the attacks. And based on this, the judges will consider the attack as successful or not successful. And finally, the scoring will be done based on the total objective score. But please make sure that there will be additional bonus score for a few categories. One category is that the most stealthy attacks and undetectable attacks will be given an additional score. The most creative and novel attacks that we may not have ever seen before will be given additional score. And also like to reward your creativity for the attacks which you almost completed or you have in mind. We will be giving you a chance to submit additional like attack ideas through a form which you can submit within 24 hours of the exercise. Please make sure that the weightage for these submitted ideas for attacks which were not implemented during the 4 hours will be much lower. But we do want to recognize the planning that went into creating your attacks. And even if your attack was not successful, we will consider the breadth of your red teaming strategy. So Marina will expand upon this strategy later in the session. The road to the finals, like is given in this particular slide. We invite you to select one slot for the network familiarization and one slot for the finals. So September is going to be a very busy month for you as a red team. So just make sure that you have selected these slots and follow the instructions given in our email that we will send later. So that's pretty much it from my side. We like invite you to keep calm and cyber exercise. And we can keep taking Q&A through the chat, but we'll keep going and invite Marina to start with the OSINT briefing at this point. So I'll stop my screen share. Yeah, Marina, you're invited to share.
Yes, I am searching for my slide deck. Just a second, I cannot. Yeah, content on. Ah, I found my slide deck. So, all right.
Yeah, we can see your PowerPoint window.
Want to remove this. Yes, let me make it a little bit larger. There was a question between maybe like if you could answer this because it's kind of relevant to what we will be discussing right now. There was a question in the chat whether like what is the different like where the border between the enumerations, like for example, if they enumerate in variables on the PLC, is it already an attack or still enumeration? I'm curious myself as well. It's a valid question.
Okay.
Can you explain? Can you answer at this point?
Yeah, I have responded in the chat.
Okay. So, okay. I cannot see the chat at this point. All right. So the purpose of this part of the briefing is to give you a little bit more ideas how to think structurally when designing or coming up with finding the damage scenarios and how to think about the system, because clearly all of you are fantastic red teamers who can do intrusion, who can elevate privileges, move laterally, and so on. But once you discovered all of the assets and you received a lot of information, what to do with that, how to approach, systematically approach the design of the attack scenario. And this is what we will discuss. And the most important is that you have to adapt this cyber-physical mindset where cyber elements are there to actually impact physical process. And that is your basically final objective. There is a lot of information on the slides. They're quite rich. I will be going very quickly so that you then later can review after the briefing. Clear, and basically this is why it's called the cyber physical attack, because like through the cyber domain, you're trying to achieve desired or wanted physical impact in the public literature, it's often like described as a big explosion. So, and even though like we think that cyber is a kind of like familiar stage, like in this component, it's not, because as you will see, you will have a lot of like basically exotic and strange protocols with which you are likely not familiar. Also, it's difficult to identify components in the traffic and so on. So even the cyber, like how you will be executing the cyber attacks in this cyber physical setting is not really straightforward. And this is why it's really so important to prepare in advance, like know your protocols, prepare the tools which you might need and so on. And then, of course, the most difficult part and least familiar is to engineer the attack scenario. So if you will have is it with purification of water distribution, and especially if it's with electricity, all of these testbeds will have their own and unique and specific to them high consequence events. And that's where you need, like, once you identified like a large idea, like what do I want to achieve? Like, do I want to contaminate the water? Do I want to make sure that the end user receive fewer water, or whatever is your end objective? Because then you can start working backwards to understand like what cyber assets involved, what exploits you need to prepare, and so on. Like, for example, this is just a simple example, not really related to this testbed, but it's kind of easy to explain, like how a physical vulnerability would look like. For example, like you would like a vessel to explode. In this case, it is a reactor. And there are different ways how you can basically, this would happen if you increase temperature in the reactor, and that can be achieved by, for example, stopping the cooling, stopping the mixer, or modifying the inflow, how to say, concentration of the chemicals, like basically disbalance them. So that is like basically you can decide like what is better way for you. However, we are focused on the physical part. And so let's assume, so if you look at the way how the physical process design itself, we would see that the pressure will be rising in the exponentially according to the temperature. So if you rise the temperature even a little bit, the pressure will be rising exponentially very quickly. Now, if you will look, like there is a large amount of inflow. So this is like large flows which go into the reactor. So obviously it's a large vessel. But then the pressure is controlled, or basically we can release the pressure via this pressure valve, it's purge valve. And as you can see, the size of this valve is very, very small. So if you would want to decrease the pressure, it will like by certain amount, it will take a long time. In 10 minutes, the vessel will explode. So that is a vulnerability. This valve is actually a vulnerability in this process. It would be a very good candidate for the attack scenario. And then you start working backwards, like, okay, do I want to disable cooling, or do I want to change the ratio of chemicals? Then you can start thinking how specifically you would implement it. But you need to start thinking first, like what is a weakness of the process, or what final effect do I want to achieve? However, like in this title or this name of cyber physical, what is not present is this control layer, because this is actually one of the most important layers, because actually the control logic is what defines how the process works itself. So this is one of the key elements. And if you will have a possibility to find control logic and study control logic, you will be able to achieve much more granular results. So this is just simply definition what control logic is, because like all the conditions, it's actually also very helpful to understand better how the process works. So control logic is the most important. And in your case, so basically the attacker can interact to achieve objectives. The attacker can interact with any of these layers to achieve physical impact. But in your cases, you will be purely remote. You will not have ability to physically interact with this process. Like, for example, if you would like to exploit the car, you can actually approach the car and put a magnet and like impact the way how ABS sensor is measuring something. So in your case, it will not be, but you can, like, for example, interact with any of these like cyber control layers. And it's important to kind of keep in mind that the entire concept of cyber-physical systems, and basically OT or ICS, SCADA, is working on the notion of control loop. You have sensors which measure process state, you have control system which evaluate the systems. It runs the logic which was already programmed. The engineers told like under which condition what should be happening or should not be happening at all. And then it's basically tell the actuators to adjust themselves to change the state of the process. And depending on different types of the process, and like here you will have like sequential processes where you can, like here you will also have a state machine, which will be also defining what is allowed to happen and not allowed to happen. So like, and as an attacker, you are more interested in what is not allowed to happen because you want to cause a damage, and those interlock or not permitted states are actually there to prevent damage to the process or to keep it always efficient. And as an attacker, you will always be interacting with control loops, and you can either modify sensor values or can you modify actuators. It's up to you. Like, for example, I often prefer to, I mean, that's my personal preference. It can be tricky to adjust actuators. So I prefer to forge sensor values to make control system believing that the process in certain state, and then the control system is adjusting actuators for me. So that's my personal preference. But again, depending on the process, your personal preference can be different. But the point is that you want to move the process in the state wanted by you. And the whole control system will be fighting against you, but we will talk about that. So of course, like all the control systems in like actually like hierarchical, the control loop is hierarchical. So for example, not only controller can control the process, but also engineer or operator on the engineering workstation or on the HMI can have permissions like to use manual control or force the point. So for example, on the engineering workstation, you can force the point, put it into a specific state. So you're basically having a God mode. So that's basically your super admin. And there could be different other applications which can do certain calculations or maybe be as a supporting, like, for example, if you did not pay the bill, nothing is happening. And so in your case, you will not have like this two upper layers, but you will have like this two levels of hierarchy. And of course, like HMI will not allow you to do a granular control, so that you will only have a certain amount of buttons. And if you will execute in attacks at the level of the control system itself, you're almost like unrestricted on what you can achieve. Here it's very quickly, it's just because like in this, in general, this will be a little bit less applicable to you to a certain extent, because like water treatment and water distribution is like sufficiently slow process. So it's not like you will need to race like against physics and control logic, but you will have electrical test bed, which is very slow. So it's important to keep in mind that control loops have the timing parameters. For example, you may, like, you want to put you rise, I don't know, the level in the vessel to a certain level. It will take a certain time. And it's important to know what is the time. So then it could be initially this dead time when you say like, hey, go to, I don't know, 1,000 liters, but first it takes process to start even moving into that direction. That is a dead time, and it takes a certain time to achieve it. And it's important to know that, because if the attack is slow, somebody can notice. You have to wait. You are more interested in the fast attacks, although fast attacks means you need to have a larger, like a more better coordination. However, for example, all electrical stuff is insanely fast. So they have very fast time content. So it's very difficult to work with electrical. Even like if you want to inject a packet, the traffic there moves so fast that you might not even able to properly inject the traffic. So it can be challenging. So it's important to keep in mind this time constant of the physical processes can be helpful. Then it's important to also kind of get the idea of like what is the difference between security and safety. So you probably have seen this security onion. the safety onion also exists. And in reality, the process design itself, the control logic, and all of the alarms, they are actually the part of the safety system, because the process is designed starting from the conception in such a way that you want to avoid as many hazardous conditions as possible. And this is why it is not so easy to bring the process into the unwanted state, because the whole process from the very beginning, from the conception, is designed to not let you to do so. So basically, like if you visualize like as a timeline, the relations between like security and safety is that, yes, you first need, like you will have a virtual machine, you will be in the test bed, you will need to move laterally to certain asset of your choice, or like those which you need, like maybe PLCs or RTUs. So you have a security incident, but then you still have all of these layers of process control measures which you need to defeat. And basically, of course, again, it will like, you will not be able to simply do something crazy, because most likely those like sequence of such events or such states are not permitted. However, like the whole where you have the upper hand is that because the control system keeps in mind, so basically safety is only working for the random events which were already predicted. They were already expected. You as an attacker now have an opportunity to actually do intentional events. And this is where then the control system will not be able to basically defeat yourself. So you will defeat it by creating not the random events, but intentional events. But again, you will need to, we will speak later about like prevent response, like about interlocks and unpermitted states and so on, because you will need to defeat them. So basically, it's hard to work with cyber physical systems because it's a time variant system. So you need to know is like something's happening here. It changes the state in a different part of the process. You need to wait. You need to coordinate. You need to be fast or slow. So it's time variance is difficult, especially if it is processes with short time constant. All control loops are there is a coupling, because like you change one control loop, the physics of the entire process is changing. The other control loops are reacting because they're measuring the new state of the process and they're reacting. So it's very difficult to deal with this coupling of control loops. And of course, again, these are real-time processes, so you need to be very fast with what you're doing. Sometimes you need to be in the race conditions. And yeah, we will see the example that sometimes you cannot beat the physics. You can implement the attack, you can design a clever scenario, you can implement it, but physics just does not allow you to achieve what you want. So these are basically like some fundamentals which we would like you to keep in mind, and they should be helpful for you, like how to look at the systems, not from the cyber or IT perspective. But then again, like we are talking about, like you need to design an attack scenario. So typically complex attacks are conceptualized with attack life cycles or kill chains. And there are many different of those, Median, this is Lockheed Martin and Sun's CISS, cyber kill chain, and there is even a Mitra. But all of them are cyber oriented. So for example, in the Sun's CISS, the whole this develop attack scenario is one stage, like develop. And MITRE is not about conceptualizing the attack. It's basically, it's if you have a ready attack, how can you disassemble any certain activities? So first you need to have an attack scenario, and then you will have blocks. So this is why we need a cyber physical attack life cycle, because that is basically, it's very similar to something what Mandian conceptually have. So it's basically the attack stages. The attacker will need to go through these stages to actually design a cyber physical attack. And here the focus is on the engineering aspect and not on cyber. And if cyber, then it is again tailored to achieve those engineering objectives. And we will now go through these stages because, again, you will be designing an attack scenario, you will need to go through the stages. And you will see so why it is important, because if you will miss certain stages, then you might then fail on the next stages. And again, while the entire scenario might have like all of these components, in reality, like within each stage you can implement different attack instances, which lead to the damage scenario, and you will get points for them. Because at the end, like it's a lot of multiple activities until you achieve a final result. But of course, like no attack is simple and it's never linear. So you basically will need, so it looks, of course, logically it's a linear process, but you will need to circle back to previous stages and so on. And like discovery is most likely you will be like continuously executing its route like for entire 4 hours. And in fact, maybe I will address this right now. It will be very important. So once you go through this concept of the cyber-physical attack life cycle, it will be important to think, how do you split team resources? Because it makes no sense that everybody's on discovery, but even within discovery, there is a reconnaissance and process comprehension. It's kind of like would be important to evaluate the strengths of each team member and basically split the activities like, hey, I am now doing like process comprehension, somebody's discovery. As soon as first information is already available, maybe you want to start on control. You can do them in parallel. For example, process comprehension control can be done in parallel and so on. And actually also a lot of these activities you already can prepare in advance. I'll show you the examples. But it's important to split the activities because it's a very, very complex work. And to achieve something in 4 hours is very, very difficult. So we start with the access stage, and it's not about like, hey, I know how to, like, I don't know, hack an access point. It's more about like understanding in which part of the process do I want to be, like what is a better access point to target for me, like which assets I want to access for example, for information, or maybe because you need certain assets solely for the information. You don't need them for the attack. But others you need for attack execution, or maybe others you need on them to have code execution on them, or maybe something to use as a proxy, like just as a jump host. And so, or you may need certain assets solely for monitoring your attack progress. So understanding which assets also you would need to access would be helpful for you to identify more relevant access points and basically build your access strategy. So it's basically guided by the question, like what kind of access to which resources do I need for my attack execution? And for example, like as a preparation, you can look through the diagram, see which access points already available, what critical assets useful for you be there. And for example, from the access standpoint, when I look at when I look at this historian workstation, well, I can be a simple user there. I'm not going to do anything beyond like looking at the data. But if I look at SCADA workstation, here I would need an elevated access because I want to have a God mode, because I have high expectation that I will be able to force points or maybe do some manual control. And for that, I would need some higher privileges, like maybe like engineer or like some senior operator and so on. So I already start preparing mentally that I would need to elevate privileges here to higher. So that is like basically what is about the preparation. But also, basically, I mean, this SWaT test bed, they're heavily research studied. There is so much information. So, for example, I already found some information about wireless access points, about even like kind of what type of points are there, what are the weaknesses there, what are the options, and so on. So you can basically, I mean, I brought you here just an example, but that is what you can already do prior, even like going for this like enumeration, like, because it's a lot of information to gather about these test beds. That is just another example. You hear, like, for example, what caught my attention here, we have the GPRS modem, which is very close to the PLC. Well, that would be a good point to enter. So, like, you would still want to be somewhere in the engineering workstation and HMI that, because you can gather there a lot of useful resources, but you also, like, it's instead of moving laterally to the PLC, I mean, I don't know, you need to do reconnaissance. Maybe there is an easy way to move laterally, but if not, you might be interested in this access point, the PRS access point. So basically the preparation is like check diagrams for possible entry points, pencil out potential assets of interest and like collect relevant exploits, because you also will have, you already have like a list of assets, so you can already gather exploits for those assets. Right. So in the discovery stage, it's about like the two different, like fundamentally different parts. It's reconnaissance. Basically, you need to perform it like normal reconnaissance. It's just that it is a lot of non-IT assets. And process comprehension, it's about understanding the physics of the process control logic and how it all works together. Discovery is about understanding the static process behavior. So we are still not looking into the dynamic process behavior. It's about collecting static information. And basically, this is just like another visualization. And again, even in the discovery, you would need to specialize tools, because you would need to figure out like a more useful information for you about each asset. And like, for example, I brought here as an example, like this is Nmap, which was like Nmap output for an HMI panel, and like it's useless. So if you really want to scan assets and receive like useful information about them, you would need a customized tools for that. And like you would probably need parsers and so on. So all of that information, majority of that information is available to you. Like a lot about which protocols are used, which devices and so on. So you basically have an opportunity to gather needed scanners and parsers in advance. Here's a little bit more information on what's relevant, and here's some example of what open source tools you may find. Maybe you already have your personal preference and you already have your toolkit. This is just an example. And then like it's also about, in general, not only like understanding the infrastructure from IT perspective, but high level, like what do I have there? Because, for example, in the EPIC testbed, we have like, I see generation, I see metering, I see solar system. That immediately should give you an idea like what I'm comfortable with, where do I think I can achieve certain attack scenario, what I'm interested in, what is easier to attack. Like, for example, solar system was recently in the news a lot. Like, for example, I brought an example here. Like, this is a system which is using this testbed. There are forums, there are vulnerabilities, there is diagrams, there is academic papers. There is a lot of information. So maybe this is a good, like, if I would like to focus, I would go there. I am curious about the system. There is information available. I would focus on this part. That is also discovery. But then, of course, again, you can use public information to discover all the protocols. I've seen here Modbus converter, which is always good. Modbus is easy to work with, so it's absolutely great. Ethernet is not so great. Here we have asset inventory, which was provided. You were provided with it. But it's very important to remember that, keep in mind that no asset inventory is ever complete. So make sure that you properly scan the network and identify all assets and make sure that you understand them and how you could use them. You can also see a little bit more of these interdependencies. They were previously just mentioned to you. Could be useful because it can be in like basically cascading effect. Right, and here's just basically, I did a little bit of search, like there's a lot of papers are written on this testbed, a lot of information already available. So this should help you in advance to kind of get more ideas, what to expect, what to find, and so on. So you can like review it later. And process comprehension, it's about like what process is doing, how it is controlled, how it is built and wired, because there is like input-output cards and so on, and like what are the operational and safety constraints. So it's basically, you start understanding more of this embedded infrastructure, control loop configuration, process dynamics, and so on. Historical process data is very useful. For example, it's easy for me, and that's my preferred method. I understand best processes via their sensor data, simply because I'm good in signal processing. So basically, like, you need to collect like all of this amount of information and correlate all of those bits and pieces together. That is just an example, not from this testbed. And then it's also important to remember and keep in mind that, like, typically, like, you might be able to capture the packets, but often it's just like you don't know like what is this register or point number. You don't know what what endpoint it is. Like how do you have a pump of interest, but where do you even find it in the traffic? But also process variables might be just in some strange numbers, so you might need to know and figure out how these measurements are scaled and be able to translate it in a useful engineering unit. So it's really important to remember that OT works on the concept of points. And like basically you need to be able to map each, like for example, this is a pipe and instrumentation diagram. When you are interested in this pump, you need to be able to find in which PLC it is actually residing, like the tag for it. Find it in the ladder logic, like control logic, and only then you will be able actually to send commands to it. So here's a little bit more information. Like I need to expedite, like get faster information about the points and diagram, like how it works. And this is one of my papers. We wrote actually an easy to read paper on how to do these mappings and what it takes, where to find the information for mapping. And actually I found in some papers, like there is a lot of hints how you will find the tags and what the tag scheme is used in this test bed. So there is a little bit of useful information. Take a look. Right, and then what you can do in advance, you can basically do this process comprehension on the test beds. Like there are like YouTube videos. So for example, this booster pump, this is a booster pump. There is YouTube video. There is like a whole section on booster. Maybe it's something useful and you want to conduct an attack scenario in here. But yeah, there is like 2 very detailed YouTube videos on these test beds where you can get a better idea how this all works. Then the next stage is just like, this is a static understanding of the process. And then you need to understand like how the dynamic process dynamics works, because you need to understand like what available controls you have, like pumps or like compressors or something else. What actually you're able to control. It's not like some controls are very difficult to control that you just like don't want to touch them. And actually understand, so if I change something here, how else is changing and how much I can change the process in general. So that is like basically really this understanding dynamic behavior and how much you can change in the process. So this is an example just like to show that you change change the position of the valve here and everything else is changing with sometimes unexpected results. And this is why it's important to have this control stage to be prepared, like what effects can be, because this can cause alarms. So basically, you can enumerate controls like pumps. There is variable speed drives, which are very convenient and easy to understand. You can control the pumps with them. There is a little bit more of, again, open source information about what controls are available and of what types. I was not very satisfied with what I found, like in terms of dynamic process behavior. I didn't find enough sensor, but I did not look into the historical data. But in the open sources, I did not find enough of sensor information, like how process behaves. Some exist. There is also like kind of logical sequences, like of states, like the process can behave only in this way. So you can know, like, if I change something here, how everything else will react. So there are some diagrams and so on. And you need to decide also on the attack strategies. Like, do you want to use step attacks or do you want to use periodic attacks and so on? But generally speaking, this is a very difficult stage. There is no tools which would help you. And in the past, like I literally had to create like this monster spreadsheet to actually document all of my understanding how the dynamically processes work, because reading the paper, it's not really very easy. You really need to get like more granular mental picture of how everything works. And then finally, like once you know like what you're able to control and to what extent, you can start designing a very granular attack scenario. So you have an idea what you want to achieve, but now you know all of your options, you can know your preferences, and you can start like really designing like from the engineering perspective, from the payload perspective, what you will be doing. This is just an idea, like, for example, pretty much any damage scenario like this large idea, they fall in these 4 categories, which you can select from. And for example, if you want to go to something like damage scenario, this is like a taxonomy of damage scenario. I think they will not allow you to do this on this test bed, but it's just for your information. Maybe it will spark some ideas. And incident data, public incident data is always a good point. So look in the electrical and water utility public incident, they might get you ideas how things can go wrong in those processes. So there is absolutely tons of different attack scenarios which you can find in public literature. You might get inspired, you might get lost in all of them. You may want to implement something like just something what you want, but the ideas are there. See if you want to use them or come up like with something else. I prefer not to look in the works of others and come up with own ideas for that, but again, that's me. Also check the existing research, because, for example, one of this research that is similar to like what can be done in this solar system. This is how I once destroyed the pump. Here's again another work on the solar. So you can find some, in the research, you can find some ideas and maybe already some, maybe even tools or like scripts which you can use. Okay. So this was an example, like I will try to go through this very quickly. So this was implemented on this SWaT test bed. And that is an example which I mentioned to you earlier, that sometimes you can have a very valid attack scenario and you can implement it, but the physics just does not play along. So we kind of try to kill the water filter. And it is a very good attack target because like, if you kill a water filter, they're very expensive. You can kill many of them at the same time, and then you really interrupt water purification for a very long time. And like I look through the, like if you look through the manual, you will find what are the bad things for this filters. And for example, their membrane can break under high pressure, like 2 bar. Then we worked with the team and we had to figure out the attack scenario for it and like how can we ignite this large pressure, and we realized we can make these 2 flows flow simultaneously. Of course, this is an exclusive, mutually exclusive condition, so we need to overcome interlock. So it was a lot of implementation, involved 2 different PLCs and a lot of thinking and effort. So eventually, once we were able to implement, we will only be able to achieve a pressure of 1 bar, which is not enough for breakage. So basically, well, the filters are still fine. And again, like information like this, this is what you typically try to figure out in the control stage. Like you're probing the control loops for the potentials to achieve desired physical state. And you may figure out in advance, like, no, you may even just discard your attack scenario because you know that the control loop will not allow you to achieve what you want. And then because like, again, like we're talking about cyber, control loops. So once you, in the damage scenario, obviously you need to have a prevent response stage. This is where you try to, as an attacker, you want to have control exclusively for yourself, because the entire control system and human operators and safety system, they will be working against you. They will want to bring process back into the efficient or safe state. So you will need to use a lot of different techniques to make sure that the control system is not able to react to what you're doing. So I've described here some different approaches, what you can do, how it is achievable. Like for example, the stale data attack. This is an example, but it's very easy to, relatively easy to implement, very effective. It can be used. Like is one of the attack instances. This is it's just an example. Most likely you will not have time to implement something like this. You can spoof sensor signals already on the sensor itself. It's one of my works as well. So yeah, for the preparation, you need to study really in advance all of the unwanted states, like interlocks and so on, to understand how, like, which system will be working against you for your attack scenario, in which way, and how you can basically defeat it. And then, of course, as you're executing an attack, you actually, unless your attack is instantaneous, like it's happened right now, like disconnect breaker happened, or you know for sure that will be the outcome. Outside these two cases, you will need to observe process state to actually monitor attack progress. And this is what also was told in the first part of the briefing. You will need to submit proof of that you achieve your attack. And that is basically, you need to obtain the feedback loop. How do I measure and monitor my attack? And I can have a proof that it actually happened and achieve my claimed effect. And there is many different ways how you can measure. And in most cases, it will not be straightforward. Most cases, there will not be a sensor which is needed to measure what you want. So you will definitely need to be creative. You need to see like what sensors are available and basically use them as a proxy. For example, this is an example again from one of the papers about this test bed, which provides such an example. So yeah, you have like, and again, you already have the list of the sensors available to you. And they'll basically know what they measure and what they do not measure. Like you can study that in advance. This is probably you will not have time to do, but it's just for your information that you can also use this feedback loop for basically coordinated different implants via process physics. And again, this stage will be a little bit less relevant to you because there is no human operators, but you can come up with scenarios and submit them and get points. It's about basically cleanup. This is a term comes from like military operations, like because like different to IT in the cyber physical systems, the physics will be changed. You can't erase changed physics. So it's observable. So the concept is here that you want to prevent, during the attack, you want to prevent operators from identifying the root cause. And even from understanding that there is a cyber attack is happening. So you want to create like a footprint or an illusion of what is happening, but it's wrong from your attack. And also for the post-incident, you want to create a forensic footprint for what the investigator should identify as a root cause. And I summarized here some ideas for you and also found something from already available papers and so on. So you can come up with some more ideas as you will be discovering the process and you can submit them for evaluation. This is a quick summary of cyber physical attack life cycle and what stage each stage where is it for. So as you will, and maybe that's a good idea to print it and have it in front of your eyes as you will be discovering during the reconnaissance. By knowing this attack stages, you will be looking already at the infrastructure with different eyes and you will have more ideas. Like I can, because the same asset can be used for many different purposes and then just document them. Like I can do that for control, maybe for feedback and so on. That's it from me. Yeah, I will stop sharing at this point and give back to the SUTD team.
Thank you so much, Marina, for that excellent sharing. Are you okay with your slides being shared with the red teams as well?
Absolutely. I prepared them so they are prepared exactly for this team with all of the examples, trying to help, like, so that people like get better ideas. Because honestly, I mean, it's a lot of wealth of information, so it's extremely hard, but this is a good starting point.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And in case red teams have any questions for you, like should we use email as the form of communication?
Sure. I mean, if anybody has like some, let's say, clever, non-trivial questions, I will be happy to answer them. Send me email. Like, can you share my email? Yeah.
Yeah, you can send us an email and then we can collect all the questions and then share it with you.
Yeah, just be mindful that, you know, like I'm a single person, but if you have like a good question, I would be happy to answer.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Okay, we are on the top of the hour right now, and we don't have any more questions in the chat. So, like, if there are any questions, please email us on the email where you have been receiving all your inputs from. And we will be sending you registration links like very soon. And after that, we look forward to you booking a slot, and then we will like expect your VM if you have a customized VM, or otherwise we'll expect you during the familiarization period. So that's all from the iTrust side as well. If you have any questions, please send them to us via email.
So one question from me. So during this reconnaissance, are the teams also allowed to do information enumeration? I believe they can, right? Because it's reconnaissance.
Yeah, they can. But if that enumeration requires them to like get into a system through password cracking, then that is not allowed in the first.
Okay. Yeah. Yes. So if the control logic is somewhere, but you need a password or account, then you cannot grab it. Okay. Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah, correct. So yeah, I wish all the red teams all the best. And we Marina will be with us in spirit throughout the exercise as our red team mentor. So we really look forward to like an excellent CISS finals. Thank you all. We will be sharing this recording with you over email as well. That's all from my side.
Yeah, maybe last comment again. It's a lot of papers. So when I was preparing this, it's a lot of papers you will find online. But you know what? Just see what you find and just kind of scroll through them, because there is a lot of like useful nuggets, including like information related to the control logic. So it's possible to find already a lot of useful information practical before the exercise. Then it will be easier for you, if you find the control logic, to understand how to modify and what to modify.
Excellent. Wonderful. Thank you, Marina. With that, we come to the end of this session. Looking forward to the next steps. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.